Off the top of your head, how many MCU lines can you quote? 10? 12? 387? We'd bet a whole lot. That's because the MCU has given us an endless amount of quotable lines across all of their movies. But did you know that some of your favorite MCU lines and moments were improvised on the spot? That's how good some of these actors are, that they can just throw out a funny line that instantly becomes iconic. Today's video is all about the most iconic improvised lines that actually made it into the final film. So let's get into it right now.
I am Iron Man.
Can you imagine what would have happened if the first Iron Man flopped? We don't even want to imagine a world without the MCU. It would be worse than that time after Thanos came to visit. Thankfully, Iron Man was a huge success, thanks in large part to Robert Downey Jr.'s masterful performance as Tony Stark. It's well known how much RDJ loves to improv lines on set, but this first one is definitely one of the best ever. It was RDJ who came up with the famous "I am Iron Man" that ended the first film, which we can all agree is one of the most iconic lines in the whole franchise. If it never happened, what would Iron Man had said to Thanos right before he snapped his fingers in Endgame? Although RDJ just happened to blurt that out, Kevin Feige got excited about it and approved leaving the quote in for the final cut of the film. Thanks, Kevin! It must be difficult sometimes to be a writer in the MCU. Sure, you're getting paid to write comic book movies, but because you're working with such talented actors, they sometimes might know better than you. This is sort of what happened in Infinity War during the first meeting between Iron Man's team and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Because the Guardians tend to be a little trigger-happy, a fight quickly breaks out before anyone can explain that they're on the same side. As the Guardians question Iron Man about where Gamora is, Iron Man has to ask who is Gamora, and we all know the rest from there. The lovable yet simple Drax blurts out, "Why is Gamora?" garnering one of the movie's biggest laughs. And the brilliant line, all improvised by Dave Bautista, which proves just how in tune he is with his character. You wouldn't know it that much from previous Thor adventures, but Chris Hemsworth is actually a funny guy. Alright, now we're just jealous because he's good-looking, talented, and funny? Some guys have all the luck. But really, early on, the Thor role didn't give him many opportunities to show off his comedic chops. That changed with Thor Ragnarok, which revitalized the Thor franchise by making it more of a wacky buddy cop comedy rather than a Shakespearean tragedy. We think it was definitely the right move, and although a lot of the movie was improvised, there was one very special line that stands out. According to Hemsworth, Thor's "he's a friend from work" line was actually suggested by a Make-A-Wish kid who was visiting the set for the day. It would go on to become one of the best lines in the movie and certainly the most memorable trailer moment. You know, besides Jeff Goldblum, of course. Continuing the Thor Ragnarok hype train, another great improvised moment was the get help scene. You know the one. Thor and Loki have to get past some guards, so Thor wants to do the trick they did when they were children by pretending Loki is hurt. As the brothers approach the guards, Thor yells for them to get help. When the guards come running, Thor flings Loki's body like a sack of potatoes, knocking him out. According to the internet's boyfriend Tom Hiddleston, the whole gimmick was made up on the day of shooting. He said that he really liked the moment because on top of being hilarious, it also highlighted a time when Thor and Loki were young boys, playing together, and it helps the audience understand something deeper about their relationship. Huh, funny and educational. Brilliant! It's moments like these that make Thor Ragnarok one of the best MCU films to date. Not all improvised moments have to leave us laughing until our belly hurts. There's enough talented actors in the MCU to deliver impromptu dramatic moments as well. The best example of this comes from Robert Downey Jr., who absolutely nailed a dramatic scene in Avengers Endgame, even if it meant going off script. When Tony Stark returns to Earth after floating in space with Nebula for weeks, it's understandable that he's probably a little cranky. We mean, any extended time with Nebula can't be good for your psyche. But Tony soon goes off on Captain America, calling him a liar for once saying they'd lose together if the time came for it. The whole scene is a tour de force of emotion, and amazingly, the Russo brothers have said that RDJ came up with most of it on his own. They didn't even have to film a lot of takes because RDJ was so locked in with it. How cool is that?
Star-Lord.
It seems silly now, but there was a lot of uncertainty behind the first Guardians of the Galaxy film before it was released. We mean, it was a movie that centered around a talking raccoon and a big Vin Diesel-sounding tree. How good could that really be? Well, boy, did it prove everyone wrong or what? That first film is a perfect blend of humor, heart, and weirdness that makes it a favorite for many MCU fans. Right off the bat, Chris Pratt's Peter Quill sets the tone for the entire movie when he tries to show off in front of Korath by telling him his outlaw name, Star-Lord. Of course, Korath has no idea who he is and laughs in his face, which heavily upsets Quill. He tries to see if Korath's Ninja Turtle goons know anything, but they're at a loss too. It's a moment that Pratt improvised, and we're totally all there for it. The only thing scarier than being yelled at by Odin is having to look at Thor's bleached eyebrows in the first Thor movie. Seriously, whoever thought that was a good idea needs to have a stern talking to. But yeah, Odin can be pretty terrifying too, especially when the actor playing him, Sir Anthony Hopkins, goes off book with his anger. Early on in the film, Thor is being berated by Odin for being a cocky and disrespectful jerk. Loki tries to step in on his behalf, but Odin lets out an intense growl that shocks Loki and shuts him up.
Father. Hey!
And this wasn't even Tom Hiddleston acting. He was legitimately stunned because the growl was improvised by Hopkins. It's a moment of raw emotion that totally fits the scene and shows the type of gravitas that Hopkins brought to Odin in that first movie. You show those young whippersnappers who's boss, Odin. Thor: The Dark World may be the black sheep of the MCU, but let's look at it this way. If it wasn't such a disaster, we never would have gotten the franchise reboot that was the wonderfully weird Thor Ragnarok. See, we're optimists here at CBR, and we always like looking at the bright side. So who cares if it has a boring plot and a severely underdeveloped main villain, because it led to something great? But there's a few bright spots, mainly the times where it allowed Chris Hemsworth to be funny. One of the most memorable moments of the film comes when Thor enters an apartment and doesn't know what to do with his hammer. He decides to hang it on a coat rack. It's one of the only laugh-out-loud moments in the whole film. And not surprising anyone who's watching this video, it was all improvised. But it begs the question, was the coat rack truly worthy? It was a crazy coincidence. Watching Spider-Man turn to dust in Tony Stark's arms made our own hearts feel like they were turning to dust as well. That scene in Avengers Infinity War was just so gut-wrenching as we got to see the MCU's best mentor-mentee relationship literally dissolve before our very eyes. But all the credit goes to Tom Holland, who's proven he's no slouch when it comes to improv. It was Holland who came up with the infamous "I don't wanna go" line that's now burned into all of our memories. Apparently, it came from an acting technique that Holland uses to help himself cry during a scene where he repeats a phrase in his head over and over again. He thought he'd try saying "I don't wanna go" out loud, and the rest is history. Does that line hurt more knowing that Spidey's MCU future is in serious limbo? Yeah, you betcha. Like any good love story, the romance between Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter had its ups and downs. It seemed like the two were perfect for each other, but there just seemed to be too many insurmountable obstacles, including being separated by decades after Cap was frozen in ice, and Cap starting a romance with Peggy's niece, who, depending on who you ask, may or may not be his own niece. You know, classic relationship stuff. Anyway, the first Captain America movie did a great job in selling us on Steve and Peggy's relationship, and one of their best moments was improvised, when Steve goes from zero to hero and exits the machine looking like Hercules. Peggy can't help but reach out and touch his new pecs. This was improvised by Haley Atwell, who couldn't help but impulsively reach out as it was the first time she saw Evans shirtless. We can't blame her. When you're the face of the franchise, we're pretty sure you can do whatever you want. What are they gonna do, fire you? Make your character put on the Infinity Gauntlet and snap away all the bad guys at the cost of your own life? Oh no. No, we're kidding. Of course we're not suggesting that Marvel killed off Tony Stark because Robert Downey Jr. liked to hide food on set to snack on while filming, but then again, we love a good conspiracy theory. Anyways, it's true. Robert Downey Jr. was notorious for snacking, and he even found a way to work it naturally into a scene. In the first Avengers movie, as Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and Steve Rogers discuss Nick Fury's secrets, Tony nonchalantly offers Banner some blueberries while he's talking. It's so natural that you'd never guess it was an improvised moment, though we noticed that he didn't offer Steve any. The first Iron Man movie had a post-credits scene that blew people's minds by setting up the Avengers. 4 years later, the Avengers saved the world from an alien threat and had a pretty amazing post-credit scene as well. And we're not talking about the one with Thanos. Nope, the one we care more about is the final shot of the Avengers silently sharing an after-work meal together at a practically destroyed shawarma restaurant. It's the perfect button to an amazing adventure, but it's all because RDJ improvised a line about it earlier in the movie. Yeah, originally when Hulk revives an unconscious Iron Man, he was supposed to say a handful of other lines. But RDJ went off script and said the now infamous shawarma line.
You ever tried shawarma?
It's funny on its own, but it becomes legendary after that post-credits scene when it's revealed the Avengers actually do go to get shawarma after the battle's done. There are a ton of reasons why Black Panther is one of the best MCU films. But one of the biggest is because of Michael B. Jordan's performance as Eric Killmonger. It's general knowledge that the MCU has struggled with crafting compelling villains for our heroes to fight, but Killmonger broke the mold by practically stealing the movie with every scene he's in. There was something about his menacing swagger that captivated all of us, and there's no scene that encompasses that better than his entrance into Wakanda. Walking into the throne room as a prisoner, Killmonger quickly takes control of the situation by revealing who he really is, throwing out a smug "Hey Auntie" to Angela Bassett. That line quickly became a favorite, and Bassett has revealed that she thinks the line was improvised. Whatever it was, we're just glad it's in the movie because it's one of the movie's most memorable lines. We've already mentioned that the mentor-mentee relationship between Tony and Peter is one of the strongest elements in the MCU. The pair is so good together that it doesn't really matter that Tony hits on Peter's hot aunt, because the guidance that he offers Peter throughout his appearances is enough to fill that Uncle Ben-shaped hole in Peter's heart. One of the standout moments from Spider-Man Homecoming is when Peter thinks him and Tony are sharing a hug, when really Tony's just trying to open the door and kick Peter out. It's hilarious, and Tom Holland recalls how that was all improvised. Holland recalls how he improvised going in for a hug and how RDJ's instincts were so good he played along with it and then went for the door. And fun fact, this scene plays even better after you watch the big hug the two share upon Spidey's return in Avengers Endgame. Although Captain America and Thor didn't have a lot of screen time together in Avengers Infinity War, they did share one of the film's best encounters when they finally crossed paths in the film's epic finale in Wakanda. It's safe to say that a lot has happened to the two men since they last saw each other. But because of impending death by vicious space dogs, it really wasn't the best time to sit and catch up. But they got to the important stuff immediately, with Captain America commenting on Thor's short hair and Thor firing back how Cap seemed to copy Thor's beard. It's a funny moment during a really intense scene, and it's something that the two Chris's came up with on the day of shooting. But come on, Thor, we're sorry, but Captain America knows how to rock a beard a little better than you.
Try me, Beyoncé.
Although Beyoncé is our queen and will eventually rule the entire planet, it's not surprising that her reach extends everywhere, even in Kathmandu, where the secret Kumar Taj is located full of sorcerers who want to protect the Earth. But going off of Wong's reaction in Doctor Strange, he acts like he's never even heard of Queen Bey. But maybe that's because Stephen Strange comes across as arrogant and cocky, so it's understandable that Wong doesn't want to engage with him that much. Early on in the movie, Strange throws out a Beyoncé reference to Wong, but is met with nothing but stone-cold indifference. Strange is amazed that Wong has apparently never heard of Beyoncé, but we know from hearing his music choices later on that it's not entirely true. But the actor who plays Wong, Benedict Wong, says that Benedict Cumberbatch threw out those pop culture references randomly, and we're glad he did, because more Beyoncé is always a good thing.
Please be secret. Please be a secret.
Tony Stark knows he's in a superhero movie or something. In the climactic opening battle of Avengers Age of Ultron, the Avengers mount an attack on a Hydra compound in order to retrieve Loki's scepter. While investigating, Tony finds a secret passageway, much to his obvious excitement. In fact, who knows if Tony Stark was even excited for it, or if Robert Downey Jr. was just giddy to find a secret passageway, because that whole moment of him whispering, "Please be a secret door, please be a secret door," was all improvised by RDJ. Because really, no matter how old you are, finding a hidden passageway or a secret door is one of life's greatest joys. You should try it sometime. The real icing on the cake is that RDJ also improvised the little "yay" he gives when he finds the door. Yay! Man, we just don't deserve RDJ. He's a treasure. The trio of Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man proved to be a winning combination in Avengers Infinity War, as you had two massively egotistical, brilliant quipsters butting heads, while cute puppy dog Peter Parker stood in the middle. It was the recipe for some great moments. While Iron Man and Doctor Strange were talking, Peter butts in saying he's backup, which is a line that Holland says he improvised. Did this affect a pro like Robert Downey Jr.? Of course not. RDJ rolled with the line and even threw in his own improvised line of "the adults are talking" right back at Peter. It highlights again how in tune with his character that RDJ is, and proves that almost nothing can shake him or throw him off once he's found his rhythm. At this point, we're not sure where Robert Downey Jr. ends and Tony Stark begins. It's no secret that Hawkeye has long been the Avenger that people make fun of the most. Maybe it's because his first big outing in the Avengers saw the Archer under mind control for almost the entire movie. The second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron, actually seemed like one huge apology letter to Hawkeye. He had a lot of the best lines, gave the best pep talks, had the most important subplot with his own family farm, and was given the label of the heart of the team by Tony Stark. It was a crazy 180 from how he was treated in the first movie. And speaking of his funny lines, one of Hawkeye's best moments in the film came completely from Jeremy Renner himself. After Quicksilver runs away from Hawkeye again, the Archer muses what it would be like if he secretly killed Quicksilver. He says, "Nobody would know. Last time I saw him, Ultron was sitting on him." It's hilarious and completely improvised. Our final entry on this list is a moment that only RDJ could do. When Tony Stark first meets Peter in his apartment, the two share a heart-to-heart chat in his bedroom. At one point, Tony goes over to Peter to sit next to him, but Peter's leg is blocking the spot. RDJ says, "I'm going to sit here so you move the leg," which feels like something Tony Stark would completely 100% say. In reality, Tom Holland forgot the blocking of the scene and forgot Tony needed to sit next to him. So it was a way for RDJ to stay in character while letting Holland know what needed to happen. That is a sign of a true pro, and having the line also be hilarious, that only adds to how awesome it ultimately is. Good job to Holland for not breaking in that moment, because this moment is just too good. It's hard to choose a personal favorite from this list of best improvised moments in the MCU, but we'll just say that almost all of RDJ's improvised moments in the MCU were pure gold. What were your guys' favorite entry? Were there any that we missed? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome MCU content. Thanks for watching!